The sun was rising over the quiet mountains of planet Ralvan as Commander Jacob Hull made his way through the broken forest. The trees were blackened by smoke, and the sky had turned a sick shade of green. His team was gone. He was the only survivor. From the crash landing, the wreck of his dropship still burned in the distance. He walked slowly, holding his wounded arm close to his chest. There had been no warning about the ambush. The mission was to deliver supplies to a neutral colony on Ralvan. But halfway down, their ship had been struck by an unknown energy blast. The scanner showed nothing before or after. Something had jammed their systems. The blast came out of nowhere and forced the ship into a deadly spin. Most of the crew didn't survive the crash. Jacob had trained for war, but not like this. Not on a planet that was supposed to be peaceful. He had no idea who the enemy was. He had no answers, only the smell of burning metal and the silence of death. His radio had no signal. His AI companion was fried. He was alone, injured, and deep in enemy territory. He moved through thick vines and strange glowing plants, guided only by instinct. Every sound made his heart race. The deeper he went into the jungle, the more he realized the planet was not what it seemed. Ralvan was not just a forgotten colony. Something darker lived here. Something powerful was watching. Then he heard the cry, a sharp, high-pitched scream that cut through the thick silence. It wasn't human. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded like a child. Jacob turned fast, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. The scream came again, this time weaker. He moved toward it, sword drawn, heart thumping. He reached a small clearing where broken trees formed a natural circle. In the center lay a small creature. Trembling. She looked no older than 5, with white fur, large ears, and glowing orange eyes. Her body was cut and bruised. She was trying to crawl away from something. Beside her, a warrior's staff was shattered in 2. Jacob lowered his sword. She was alien, clearly, but not a threat. She looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. He knelt slowly, his hands open. Her body was shaking, but she didn't run. Jacob knew fear when he saw it. And this little one was full of it. He picked her up gently and wrapped her in part of his torn jacket. She didn't resist. She only whimpered and buried her face into his chest. Her body was cold, and she was bleeding. Jacob didn't know what species she was, but he knew he couldn't leave her here, not alone in a war zone. Not like this. Just then, the ground rumbled, not from behind, but above. Jacob looked up to see 3 dark shadows flying across the sky. Fast, silent, sharp-winged. They were scanning, not for him. For her, she wasn't just some lost child. She was being hunted. And now so was he. He ran. Through mud, through thorns, through roots that tried to trip him. Every step hurt. His shoulder burned. But he held her close and kept moving. The sky darkened again. Red lights scanned the ground. He knew he had only minutes before they returned. He needed shelter. He needed cover. At the base of a hill, he found a cave hidden by thick vines. It was shallow but dry. He crawled inside and pressed against the wall, holding the child tight. She was asleep now, exhausted. He listened to the patrols above. They were moving in circles. They were not giving up. Jacob looked down at the orphan in his arms. Her breathing was steady now. She was safe for the moment, but he knew that carrying her meant war. Someone powerful wanted her gone. He had just put himself in the crosshairs of a war he didn't understand. He could walk away. Leave her, maybe survive, but something inside him refused. He had seen enough death, enough cruelty. He couldn't be that man. Not today. Not while she still breathed. Jacob adjusted his grip on the child and whispered a promise he didn't know he could keep. You're safe now. I won't let them take you. The cave was silent, except for the sound of her breathing. Jacob sat with his back against the cold wall, holding the alien orphan in his arms. The girl's skin shimmered, faintly under the dim light, soft and warm against his armored chest. Outside, the enemy searched with cold eyes and deadly machines. He could hear the low hum of their flyers passing overhead. He needed to move before sunrise. The patrols would double once daylight hit. But he had no map, no comms, and no backup. He had a wounded arm and a child who couldn't walk. Still, he felt more purpose now than ever before. Saving her gave him something to hold on to. Jacob gently adjusted her position. Her ears twitched as she stirred, then settled back into sleep. She trusted him, even though they had just met. That trust was dangerous, but he had already made his choice. The enemy would not get her as long as he was alive. When dawn came, the jungle glowed with strange colors. Trees leaked golden sap. The leaves shifted in the wind like they were breathing. Jacob moved fast, keeping to the shadows. The orphan girl clung to him silently. She never cried. Not once. It made him wonder what she had already survived. His training kicked in. Every sound, every movement, he studied with care. He avoided open trails and climbed where the enemy would not expect. His body ached, but he kept going. The girl's life depended on his steps being perfect. A roar split the sky. One of the flying scouts spotted movement. Jacob ducked behind. A thick root structure, pressing the girl against him. The scanner beam passed just inches away. One more second in the open, and they would have been burned to ash. The enemy wasn't human. That much was clear now. They flew in curved ships, their armor like dark stone. They didn't speak. They didn't shout. They hunted like machines but moved with purpose. These weren't pirates or rogue soldiers. These were warriors of a powerful race. Jacob ran again, deeper into the jungle. The trees grew stranger. Some pulsed with light. Others hissed when touched. The deeper they went, the more alien everything became. He was no longer on a battlefield. He was inside a living world. Then he saw them. Two figures moving through the trees ahead. Not scouts. Not hunters, locals. Humanoid but taller, with green skin and long feathered arms. They wore bone armor and carried spears made from glowing crystal. They hadn't seen him yet. Jacob had no choice. He stepped out slowly and raised his hand in. Peace. The orphan girl looked up, her eyes meeting theirs. The moment they saw her, everything changed. The warriors dropped to one knee and slammed their spears into the ground. Their eyes widened in shock. One of them stepped forward and spoke in a strange tongue. Then, switching to broken Galactic common, he said, "Child of the Sky Flame, you carry her, you protect her. You are enemy to all who want her dead." Jacob didn't understand the title, but he understood the danger. If these warriors knew her, others would too. And if she meant something important to their people, then stealing her away might be seen as a threat. He asked, "Can you help us? I don't want to hurt anyone. I only want to keep her safe." The warrior nodded slowly. "You follow us. The clans will decide. But beware, human. She is not just a child. She's a spark of war." As they walked together, the forest opened into a hidden village. It was built into the trees, with walkways made of woven roots. Children peeked from behind walls. Adults whispered when they saw Jacob and the child. A tall woman approached, wearing a headdress of silver feathers. Her eyes locked on the girl, then on Jacob. "You brought the orphan here. Do you understand what you've done?" Jacob stood firm. "She needed help. I gave it. That's all I know," the woman sighed. "Then you must know this. She's the last of her kind. Every warrior race in this quadrant wants her gone. You have carried a storm into our forest." Jacob looked down at the sleeping girl again. Her face was calm, peaceful. To him, she was just a child who needed someone. But to the galaxy, she was something far more dangerous. He whispered to himself, "Then let them come." Jacob sat near a fire made from glowing roots that gave off gentle blue light. The alien child was wrapped in a soft blanket beside him. The village was quiet now, but he could feel the eyes watching him from the trees. These people were not his enemies, but they were not his friends yet either. The tall woman who led the village was called Araka. She had power in her voice and age in her eyes. When she sat across from Jacob, she brought silence with her. She stared at the child for a long moment before she spoke. Her name is Keela. She is not just a child. She is royal blood from the flame burn line. Jacob looked down at the girl, who now slept peacefully. She didn't look like royalty. She looked like a lost child who had no home left. He asked Araka what that meant. The woman's voice grew firm. Keela's the only survivor of the flame burn. Her people ruled with honor. But when they refused to join the war pact, every warrior race turned against them. Jacob understood the weight of her words. This wasn't a small war. This was galaxy-wide politics. The war pact wasn't just a military group. It was a circle of powerful species who ruled through fear and strength. Refusing them meant death. Her parents died trying to protect her, Araka said. They sent her here using a cloaked escape pod. Only we knew the path. But now that you carry her scent, the pact knows she lives. You've become a target without knowing it. Jacob didn't regret saving her, but the reality hit hard. He was now carrying the symbol of rebellion. The Flameburn were seen as a threat. Keeping Keela alive meant standing against powerful forces. Forces that didn't accept failure. The villagers prepared offerings and guarded the trees with sharpened crystal weapons. They didn't turn Jacob away, but they didn't trust him yet. Only Keela seemed at peace with him. She would not let go of his hand even in sleep. Later that night, Jacob stepped away from the fire and looked up at the sky. Stars blinked beyond the glowing treetops. Somewhere above, ships were hunting. He knew they would come soon. This place was hidden, but not safe. Nothing was safe anymore. Araka joined him under the tree. "You don't have to stay," she said. "You could leave now and be free. Keela would be protected here for a while. But if you stay with her, your life will never be the same again." Jacob didn't need time to think. "I stay. I don't leave children behind," he said. His voice was steady. His decision was made. Araka nodded slowly. "Then you must know the deeper truth. Keela has power. Not just a title. Her bloodline holds ancient energy. Energy that can awaken the hidden flame. If she survives to adulthood, she could break the pact." Jacob was silent. He didn't believe in magic, but he had seen things on this planet that had no explanation. If what Araka said was true, then Keela wasn't just a target. She was hope. The next morning, the jungle trembled. A scout ran into the village, shouting words in the native tongue. Araka turned to Jacob with tight eyes. "They found us." Small group. 3 ships landed near the waterfall path. Jacob moved fast. He armed himself with a crystal blade offered by the villagers. Keela clung to him again. She didn't speak much, but her presence gave him strength. The villagers prepared to fight. But Jacob knew they were not soldiers. They had heart, but no armor. He stepped forward and spoke loudly. "Get Keela to safety. I'll slow them down." Araka placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are one, human, but your fire is real. The pact will not expect you." Jacob smiled slightly. "Then let's make them regret that." As he walked toward the jungle path, Keela reached out and touched his hand. Her eyes glowed briefly with strange light. He felt a warmth pass into his arm. It was not pain. It was strength. For the first time, Jacob felt something awaken inside him. Jacob moved through the jungle like a shadow. His body hurt, but his steps were silent. He held the crystal blade tightly, its surface glowing faint blue. His eyes scanned every movement. The sounds of the forest had changed. Birds no longer sang. The trees stood still. Danger had arrived. He reached the waterfall path just before sunrise. Mist rolled through the air, thick and cold. He saw footprints, heavy, armored, recent. At least 5 soldiers had landed. From the patterns, he guessed they were from the Dravet clan, one of the most brutal races in the pact. He crouched low, studying the trail before moving forward. The jungle opened into a clearing where broken stone towers stood. This must have been a sacred site once. Now it was a battlefield. The enemy had made camp here. They had drones circling above, scanning for movement. A large transport hovered between the trees, engines humming quietly. They were preparing for something bigger. Jacob didn't wait. He grabbed a rock and threw it far into the bushes. The drones turned instantly. When the soldiers moved to investigate, he struck. His blade sliced through the first one's leg armor. The alien screamed as it fell. Another turned, too slow. Jacob smashed the hilt into its throat before the enemy could fire. The others shouted in their language. Jacob didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Alarm, confusion. He used the moment to vanish behind the stone pillars. They fired blindly, burning holes into the trees. Jacob circled, staying low. He knew the forest better then. They did now. When he attacked again, he used their own panic. He grabbed one by the arm and threw it against the stone. The crystal blade pierced the enemy's chest. Sparks flew. 2 down, but the third spotted him. A pulse rifle fired. The beam missed by inches, melting the ground behind Jacob's feet. He dove, rolled, and came up with dirt in his teeth. The rifle fired again. This time it hit a tree, sending pieces flying. Jacob threw a dagger into the shooter's shoulder, then charged forward and tackled him to the ground. He slammed the blade down hard, ending the fight. 3 were dead. But 2 more were missing. He didn't celebrate. He knew the enemy was regrouping. He grabbed one of their comm devices, hoping to hear something useful. Static, then a voice. Cold and deep. Target confirmed. Flameburn child located. Preparing extraction. Kill the protector. Jacob crushed the device with his hand. He turned back toward the village. His legs burned, but he didn't stop. His chest tightened with fear. If they knew Keela's location, they would attack soon. She wasn't ready. The villagers weren't ready. He had to get back first. As he ran, smoke rose in the distance. Red light flashed through the trees. The fight had already started. He pushed harder, leaping over roots and ducking under branches. The sounds of war were everywhere. Screams, blasters, roars. The jungle itself shook with fury. He arrived to find the village under siege. Enemy soldiers had entered from the west. Trees burned. Homes made of living roots cracked and collapsed. Araka fought near the center, her silver headdress gone, her blade covered in dark blood. Villagers fought with everything they had. Spears, slings, even bare fists. Jacob joined the fray without a word. He charged the nearest attacker and took him down with one clean strike. He blocked a second with his shoulder, then drove his blade into the alien side. A third enemy aimed at a child. Jacob pulled a burning spear from the ground and threw it into the soldier's chest before the shot could fire. Keela stood in the temple doorway, eyes glowing again. She raised her small hand. A circle of fire burst from her feet. The flames twisted upward and slammed into the enemy lines. Soldiers screamed. Some dropped their weapons and ran. Others burned where they stood. The villagers stared in awe. Even Araka paused. Jacob moved to Keela's side and shielded her with his arm. Her eyes dimmed. She fell forward, weak. He caught her before she hit the ground. Araka ran to them and placed a hand on Keela's head. She has awakened the flame. Too soon, too strong. She must rest. Jacob looked at the damage around them. The village was half destroyed. The enemy was gone for now, but not forever. He knew this was only the beginning. He carried Keela into the temple and whispered, "You saved them. Now I'll protect you again." Keela slept in a bed made of soft leaves and glowing moss. Her tiny frame trembled now and then, as if her dreams were filled with fire. Jacob sat by her side, never moving far. The battle had ended hours ago, but his heart still raced. He watched her breathe and listened for danger in every sound. Araka entered quietly, holding a bowl of steaming liquid. "This will help her recover," she said. Jacob took the bowl and helped Keela sip. The child coughed once but drank it all. Araka sat beside him and looked at the burns on the temple walls. "She has awakened a power that should not rise." "This soon?" Jacob asked what it meant. Araka explained in a voice filled with worry. "Flame-burn blood carries an ancient force. It sleeps until the right time. But Keela's pain, her fear, and your bond triggered it. Now the pact will sense her energy. They will come in greater numbers." Jacob rubbed his hands together. He knew they couldn't stay here much longer. The village would fall if another attack came. The people were brave, but they were not soldiers. They needed to hide or run, but Keela needed time. Moving her now would be dangerous. The village elders gathered that night in a circle of stone. Jacob stood with them. The air was tense. Araka spoke first. "We protected her, and now we are marked. We must decide what path to take." Some elders wanted to send Keela away, far into the jungle. Others suggested contacting allies from older wars. A few even blamed Jacob, saying his human scent might have led the pact here. But none dared speak against Keela directly. Her power had saved their lives. Jacob stepped forward. "I didn't come here to bring war, but now it's at your gates. If you give me a map, I'll take Keela and draw them away. I'll keep her moving. You don't have to suffer for us." Araka raised her hand. "No, you carry a burden now, human, but it is not yours alone. We will help, not because we fear, but because we believe. The girl has more than power. She has a heart that binds others." The flame chose her. That night, Jacob packed supplies, food, water, 2 blades. One was crystal, the other a human combat knife. Araka gave him a cloak that would hide heat signatures. A young scout named Tyan was chosen to guide them through the underground routes where the packed scanners couldn't reach. Before dawn, Keela woke up. Her voice was weak but steady. "Are we leaving?" Jacob nodded. "Yes, we need to keep you safe." She touched his hand. Her skin was warmer than before, and her eyes glowed gently. "You're not afraid of me?" "No," he said. "I'm afraid for you." The forest was darker beneath the ground. The tunnels glowed faintly from root light. Tyan moved ahead, marking safe paths. Jacob carried Keela on his back, wrapped in a cloth sling. The silence felt alive. Every step echoed through the earth. Suddenly, Tyan raised his hand. He crouched and pointed at a crack in the tunnel wall. Soft vibrations passed through the stone. Jacob placed his hand on it. The rhythm was unnatural. Machines were nearby, drilling, searching. The pact was hunting again. They moved faster now, turning through smaller tunnels. Keela whispered the right direction each time, as if the forest answered her thoughts. Jacob didn't ask how. He just trusted her. After hours of walking, they reached an opening above. Tyan climbed out first and gave the signal. The jungle here was different. Taller trees, cold wind. The stars above were unfamiliar. They had crossed into forbidden lands. Araka had once called it the grave of the flame-burn. It was where the last stand of her people had been made. No one returned from here. But maybe that was why it was safe now. Even the pact feared old ghosts. Jacob built a small shelter from vines and stone. Keela sat quietly beside the fire. Her fingers traced the air, leaving trails of soft orange light. Tyan watched from a distance, eyes wide with awe. "She really is the heir," Jacob didn't answer. He looked at Keela and saw more than power. He saw someone trying to carry the weight of a lost people. And she was just a child. As the fire crackled, Keela whispered, "They won't stop. Even if I run forever." Jacob looked into the flames and replied, "Then we won't run. We'll make them stop." The jungle around the Grave Valley was silent as if it held its breath. Jacob had learned to read silence like a language. This kind of quiet meant someone was near. He scanned the tree line while Tyan kept watch from above. Keela stayed behind the shelter, drawing patterns in the dirt with her glowing fingers. They had been hiding for 2 days. No signals, no drones, no attacks, but it didn't feel like safety. It felt like waiting. And Jacob knew better than to think the enemy had given up. The pact wasn't built on patience. It was built on pride and fear. And Keela's survival was a threat to both. Tyan returned from the cliff edge with tight shoulders. "They're here," he said. 3 dropships. North side, no movement yet. But they're setting up long-range cannons. They're not searching anymore. They're preparing for war. Jacob nodded and stood. His blade was already strapped to his back. His armor was patched, dented, but still strong. He had fought before. But this wasn't just another mission. This was a stand, a line in the dirt. They could not run anymore. Keela walked up to him, her small hands wrapped around his wrist. "You won't leave me behind, right?" He shook his head slowly. "Never." She looked into his eyes and said something in a language he didn't know. Her voice echoed slightly as if it touched the roots beneath them. A sudden warmth filled the ground. Trees bent toward her. The wind changed direction. The jungle was listening to her now. Tyan stepped back. "She's waking them. The flame-burned spirits." "I've heard stories, but never seen it," Jacob felt. The air shifted. The heat was no longer just from the sun. It came from the earth itself. He could smell ash in the wind. Keela was awakening something old. Something ancient that had not risen since her people died. Suddenly, a blast shook the trees. The enemy had fired the first shot. Soil flew through the air. The mountain wall cracked. A second explosion followed. Jacob grabbed Keela and pulled her behind the shelter while Tyan fired a signal arrow high into the sky. The forest responded. Vines grew in seconds. Rocks moved as if pushed by invisible hands. The ground split, revealing glowing veins of fire. The flame-burned grave had awakened. Keela stood in the center, eyes glowing brighter than ever. Her voice rang out, no longer a whisper. The fire from the forest surged into a wall between them and the approaching enemy. The pack soldiers tried to push through, but the flames danced around them like living blades. Some burned, others ran. Their machines failed one by one. The jungle had turned against them. Jacob fought like a storm. He used the terrain, the vines, the roots. Every step was a trap for the enemy. Tyan fought beside him, fast and sharp. They protected Keela without question. The enemy's numbers fell, one by one. The fire protected them, but it was Keela who gave it purpose. Then the packed commander appeared, larger than the others, armored in black steel. He moved through the flames untouched. His blade crackled with dark energy. He shouted something Jacob didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. He had come for the girl. Jacob stepped between them. "You want her, you go through me." The commander rushed forward, and their blades clashed with a sound like thunder. Sparks flew. Jacob blocked the first strike, then ducked and slashed. The commander hit him hard, knocking him into a tree. Pain shot through his ribs, but he stood again. He wouldn't fall. "Not here." Keela raised her hand. A beam of fire shot forward, but the commander deflected it. He threw his blade at her. Jacob leaped and caught it mid-air, roaring in pain as the dark energy tore into his palm. He dropped the blade and tackled the commander to the ground. They fought in the dirt, fists and elbows, rage and grit. Finally, Jacob reached for a broken crystal shard and drove it into the enemy's chest. The armor cracked. The light inside the commander faded. He stopped moving. Jacob stood, breathing heavy. Blood ran down his arms, but he smiled when he saw. Keela was safe. She ran to him and held his hand tightly. "You saved me again." He looked at the burning forest and the fallen enemy and said, "You saved me first." Smoke still floated in the air as Jacob helped Keela sit under the large flame tree. Its red leaves shimmered with light from the burning forest. The ground around them was scorched, and the bodies of the fallen pack soldiers lay where they had fallen. Tyan stood nearby, guarding the area with sharp eyes and a tighter grip on his weapon. They had survived the assault, but it didn't feel like a victory. Jacob's arm was wrapped in thick bandages made from jungle cloth. Every breath hurt. His body was bruised, scraped, and burned, but he was still standing. He kept glancing at Keela, who had fallen quiet since the battle. Her energy was drained, her power dimmed, but her spirit remained strong. The forest spirits had returned to silence. The fire that once danced with fury now flickered gently. Arika's words echoed in Jacob's head. "The flame is alive. But it cannot burn alone." He now understood what she meant. Keela had power, but she needed more than fire. She needed protection, allies, and a voice the galaxy could not ignore. Jacob stood and walked to the edge of the cliff. Below him, smoke trailed into the sky like dark veins. He pulled a small beacon from his pack. It was old, military grade, and meant to send a signal across sectors. He had kept it hidden in case of rescue. But now, it would be used for something else. He placed the beacon on the ground and activated it. The signal light blinked blue. A small hologram rose from the top. He pressed the record button and took a deep breath before speaking. "My name is Commander Jacob Hawley of Earth. I rescued a child who carries the blood of the Flameborn. I did not know who she was, but I made a choice to save her. That choice has brought war. Every warrior race that follows the pack now hunts us, not because we attacked them, but because we refuse to let a child die. I'm not asking for help. I'm not begging for mercy. I'm sending this message so the galaxy knows the truth. Keela lives. She is the last of her kind, and she will not be hunted anymore. If you come for her, know that you will face me. Know that she is not alone." He ended the recording and sent the signal into open space. It would bounce from satellite to satellite, crossing systems, reaching allies, enemies, and those who watched from the shadows. The message was out. The war was no longer silent. Tyan walked over and looked at the beacon. "You just put a fire into the stars," Jacob nodded. "Then let them burn." Back at the flame tree, Keela raised her head. Her eyes met Jacob's, and a small smile touched her lips. "You sent the message." He sat beside her and nodded again. They needed to hear it. They needed to know you're not hiding anymore. Keela closed her eyes for a moment. "Then we wait." They didn't wait long. Within hours, the beacon caught multiple responses. Some came from neutral traders. Others came from old allies of the Flameborn, but one stood out. A signal from a massive ship orbiting the outer system. Its voice was deep and sharp. "We have received your challenge. The Pact will respond. We will come for the girl, and for you." Jacob didn't flinch. "Good, let them." The villagers prepared again. They rebuilt what they could. The jungle responded as well. Trees moved, roots hardened. The forest was ready to fight again. Keela stood at the center of it all. She was small, but her presence reached across the trees. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held fire. "I will not run," she said. Jacob placed his hand on her shoulder. "We fight together." The stars above now carried their warning. What came next would decide more than one life. The galaxy had heard the cry. Now it would answer with fire. The sky turned dark with ships as the packed fleet arrived over the jungle. Their vessels covered the sun like metal clouds. Beams of light scanned the trees below. Each beam carried death. The villagers stared upward with silent fear, but they did not run. They stood beside Jacob and Keela, ready to protect the last spark of the flame burn. Jacob looked at Keela and saw no fear in her eyes, only calm. She was no longer just a child. She was something more now. The forest itself listened to her. The roots moved when she walked. The trees leaned toward her presence. She had become one with the flame of her people. Tyan handed Jacob a spear made from stone and fire. "This is our last weapon," he said. "It was never meant to be used by humans, but you've earned it." Jacob took the weapon without a word. Its surface was warm, alive, as if it carried the memory of those who once held it. He tightened his grip and nodded to Tyan. The time for talking had ended. What came next would decide everything. The pack landed first with drop pods. Hundreds of them fell like fireballs from the sky. The earth shook as they slammed into the ground. When the doors opened, armored warriors marched out in perfect formation, their faces hidden behind metal masks. Their orders clear: kill the child. Leave nothing standing. Keela stood on a stone platform built from the roots. Her cloak blew in the wind. She raised one hand, and the earth responded. Vines burst from the ground, wrapping around trees, thickening the barrier between the villagers and the attackers. The first wave came fast. Blasters fired. Missiles launched. But the forest fought back. Jacob led the defense. He struck fast, using the spear with deadly precision. Tyan moved like lightning, cutting through the enemy lines. Araka fought beside them, her blade glowing red. The jungle itself became a battlefield, trees bent to strike. Roots rose to trip the enemy. Fire moved like a living wall, but the pack didn't stop. They kept sending more. Their commander dropped from a ship in black armor and roared across the battlefield. He carried a weapon made to destroy cities. He moved toward Keela with fury. No one could stop him. Not even the jungle fire. Jacob saw him break through the final wall of vines. He was steps away from Keela. Jacob ran. Faster than he ever had. His legs screamed, his ribs burned. But he didn't stop. He slammed into the commander with the full weight of his body. The two crashed to the ground. The commander rose first and struck Jacob across the face. Blood spilled. He lifted his weapon. But Keela stepped forward. Her hand glowed with bright orange light. The fire around them swirled into her palm. She raised it high. A beam of pure energy shot down from the sky. Summoned by her will, the commander tried to strike her, but his weapon melted in his hands. His armor cracked. His body lifted from the ground, surrounded by fire. He screamed once before the light took him. When it faded, there was nothing left. The battlefield fell silent. The remaining pack soldiers dropped their weapons. Some fell to their knees. Others ran. The forest quieted again. The war was over. The message had been heard. The flame had returned, and it had chosen to live. Jacob collapsed to one knee. His vision blurred. Keela rushed to him and held his face in her hands. "You kept your promise," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "You're safe now." "That's all I wanted." Tyan and Araka helped him stand. Around them, villagers wept with relief. The jungle pulsed with warm light. The Flameburn were not forgotten. They were reborn through Keela and through the courage of a human who chose to save a stranger. Days later, the galaxy responded. Messages came from distant systems. Old allies offered support. Even former enemies turned their eyes in respect. Jacob's message had spread, and now his story was told across stars. Keela stood on a new platform, no longer hiding. She spoke for her people and for those who had no voice. And beside her stood Jacob, no longer a soldier of Earth, but a guardian of the flame. And when Keela Was asked how the war had turned, she gave only one answer: the human loved enough to fight.